This is video two, Epps Air Service, and my son working there, and their part in all this. They were keeping after Epps' son that owned that one. There were three Epps brothers, and I've said this. One had the Epps in Birmingham Air Service, one in Huntsville where NASA is, and then the one, and they got into more in NASA than in Huntsville than just an air service. They got into owning some of the groups that owned what am I trying to say? Like, I think they own spacecraft, and they got into other things connected with the U.S. government and NASA and everything. Oh, I can get lost in trying to tell it. Back to Atlanta, in Chamblee, and Mark had gone to work for Epps. So they chase the plane flying in from Columbia with drugs on it that Epps' son there in Chamblee, Atlanta airport where Mark worked. They chased him down with the drugs and they charged him. And that was quite a little scene there. The jets, you know, you got the agency chasing the jet, and he's Epps' son. And anyway, here's the ending to that. When they did all this to me, I did the book, and this happened during that span when I lived at Laurelwood. Got the letter from the FBI. Mark had started working out there. He hadn't been working long when this happened. Chase that brought down the plane. Okay, after you saw just a little bit of that in the paper, and there was a segment on TV, on the media, TV. I know there was a short segment. I'm trying to make sure of what I say. My point was, it was dropped. He got something like supposedly 3 years. Now, I can be wrong on the 3 years, but it was dropped. Now then, what you get is the harassment of my son Mark. And when I was almost killed, Mark worked out at the airport to put himself through pilot school. He froze. My babies went through hell. They have. He didn't even have gloves in the winter to clean and gas the planes with. But he worked and he got his pilot's license. And I remember he said, "Mom, you'll be the first one I take up when I get my license." And I thought, oh God, I'm terrified of flying, but I'm going to go anyway. This is my son. Well, ended up that I was almost killed April Fool's Day of 80. My apartment, everything gone. And I didn't see my sons. You have to know what they did to me. And you know, I would try to reach Mark at Epps Air Service, and they would keep him from me. Lina Dempsey, the mother of the twins, that horrible psychopath that killed her twins and might as well have murdered me every day of my life. She could get through and hassle my son at his workplace trying to, I don't know, she'd call, I couldn't call. In other words, in return, this is what happened. The FBI and the other agencies, and they all mix and mingle. If you think that they're separate, it's not true. Your Secret Service, all of them. Howard Baker ran for president in 1980, and that was after April Fool's Day when I was almost killed. And the person that, I'm not going to mention his name anymore, I grew up thinking he was a brother. He was agent to guard him, which is Secret Service, up in Washington in 80. And here I am almost killed, you know, all this is going on. So anyway, they used the FBI and probably the FBI. Well, the Brits have kept me alive, but there's a good segment of the FBI really that have tried to help. Anyway, the thing was that they made a deal there, and the thing about Epps' son was shut up. Suddenly, I think he got a couple of years the last I heard, and that was it. It was just shut up. But they kept Mark from me, and when I would try to get through to him, I couldn't. And then I'm going to all the things. It was things I couldn't tell Mark and Scott. I thought, and I was sure they'd be killed if I did. I was afraid their father was going to kill them. I'm going to have to quit because I guess people are maybe trying to sleep here. And I always hoped that Mark and Scott would see the YouTubes or Facebook and know the truth, and that they're alive somewhere and safe. I know there was some other things I was going to put up, but about it. Some horror stories, trying to reach my sons and find them. I am going to tell this after I came here to, I'm skipping some I started to tell. Roanoke, I had no money. This is in 86, and my mom and dad were still alive then. I know that. And still together, married all these years. It was a total take down the line about my dad. Anyway, a couple of years later, I'm trying to find my children. I walked in the ice and snow. I lived on the trail up there. Everything. In the hot sun, I'd walk. I got back down there at one point. Somebody bought me a ticket after I'd walked in the snow and everything a good ways. I need a tissue now and I don't have it. Anyway, I got down there and suddenly I had one night, and I'm not going to tell you what happened that night. That was horror. What happened? But anyway, the next morning, I called Epps Service, and I had no money to get back to Greyhound bus. I didn't know how I was going to get back up here, or couldn't find my sons. Okay, I called Epps Air. I had the gas station place there. It had coffee, and I'd gone in to use their phone or ask them, I guess, for money for the phone, a quarter. Anyway, how'd that turn out? I called Epps Air Service, and suddenly after these years, this is fast forward to 86, 87, back then, maybe 88. And suddenly Mark was there. And they said, oh, yes, he's here. He just left work. And I got to find a tissue. I'll have to use this. Excuse me, I can't do this over. Anyway, suddenly Mark's there, supposedly. And I said, well, I'm going to go back to the Greyhound bus station and wait. And will you please have him call me? And they said, yeah, we'll get in touch with him now. So I did get back to the Greyhound bus station. Wow. And got in touch with Mark, who I thought was Mark. Sounded just like him. And he said, well, he would be right over to Greyhound. And I don't know if the Brits owned Greyhound back then, the royal family did. They may have. I didn't realize they owned Greyhound until after I was living up here. I had been up in Roanoke for quite a few years. Anyway, you have to know how things are done in patterns. It's like teaching you Braille or Crypt. Anyway, I'm so anxious. Here's my son. He's coming to Greyhound. I'm going to get to see him, and then I'll get to see Scott. And he drove up, and I won't try to, because it's too much. You wouldn't understand it if I give one segment. He got out of his Ranger truck that he backed in a certain way, and he came up, and I'm out here running from Greyhound out to meet him. He's got these huge glasses like Wayne Williams. If anybody's kept in touch with Wayne Williams, was put in prison for the murders in Atlanta, and I was trying to tell that about that. Mary Welcome was his attorney, and the CIA retired attorney took over from Mary. It was all, uh, you know. Anyway, he had glasses on like that, and somebody else wore. They were odd, like comic glasses or something. Anyway, I run out to hug him, and I started crying, and he hugged me, and he took his glasses off, those big glasses off. I looked up, and I saw at the moment they're not the eyes of my son. This is not Mark. And as we walked back up to the Greyhound bus station there in Marietta, he said, okay, I looked, and he wasn't the stature of my son. He didn't have his build, his eyes, it wasn't Mark. But he looked enough like Mark that it was shocking, and he sounded just like him. So what he did to alert me, and he did do this, because Mark would never drink coffee. I think he said at times to stay awake when he worked at Epps or something, when he was working night shift, he would drink a cup of coffee once in a blue moon. He didn't like it. He said to me, I've got to get up here to the bus station. Let's go, like, hurry. He had just hugged me, and I looked in his eyes, and I thought, no, this isn't Mark. No, 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 no. And then your other sentence is, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, I had questions when he said, but this is the cute clue right at the moment. He said, come on, I got to get up here to Greyhound and get a cup of coffee. Got to have a cup of coffee. My son would never have said that. And then all the times I have ridden Greyhound bus, and I have quite a few times, I have never seen one that didn't have a coffee machine in the Greyhound bus station. Marietta didn't have one. So that's a clue right now. He knew it. He was letting me know he wasn't the real Mark. So I went in, and real quick he turns around and buys me a ticket back up here. And I'm in kind of shock. And when I got back on Greyhound, the manager, I guess is who it was, there at the Greyhound station, is a small one, but she stuck her head in the Greyhound as I'm fixing to leave, and she says, lady, that's not your son. And later I found out I'm not going any further, because I understand that some of this was to save my sons, and I hope I haven't said anything or done anything that's caused my sons any pain. And somebody had the gall on Facebook that was supposedly a friend. I looked and saw that they had put William and Harry's picture, a big one, up, and on their profile, just to get at me with what they said. I unfriended them. I thought anybody on my Facebook knows what I've told, who my sons are. They're the real heirs, not this sorry bunch of Elizabeth and Philip and Charles and Camilla and William and Harry. My sons didn't ask to be born into this. My father is a good man, my mother. I want his name cleared. I may never get to see it. And look what they've done to me and my sons, who are heirs, simply because my father did the right thing and my mother. And your global government is in power now as the United Nations up there. And that's the part about well, there's another section to this too, about bringing drugs into the country I won't get into. Be quite shocking if I lived to get before a court and this whole thing had to be towed.